I never thought I would stand in a courtroom looking across at my own parents sitting at the plaintiff's table. But there I was, 30 years old, being sued by the two people who raised me. Their reason I bought a house. With my own money. From my own savings. And according to them, that house should have gone to my sister instead. The absurdity of it all still makes my head spin. How did we get here? How did the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally become strangers who saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to their plans? Before we dive into how my own parents became strangers in a courtroom, I would love to know where you are watching from. Drop your city in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe, because what happened next will show you exactly how far family betrayal can go. Growing up in the suburbs of Seattle, I always knew something was different about how my parents treated me compared to my sister. My father, Richard, worked as an accountant. He was the kind of man who spoke in spreadsheets and saw emotions as inefficient variables. My mother, Patricia, taught elementary school, but at home she had a favorite student, and it was not me. My sister, Amber, 4 years younger, was the golden child from the moment she arrived. The differences started small. When Amber wanted a new toy, it appeared within days. When I asked for something, I heard about budgets and responsibility. Amber got piano lessons with a private instructor who came to our house twice a week. I taught myself guitar by watching free videos on YouTube using an old acoustic I found at a garage sale for $20. Summer vacations meant trips to Disneyland and beach resorts for Amber, while I spent my breaks working at the local grocery store from the age of 16. I told myself it was normal. I was the boy, the older one. I was supposed to be tougher, more independent. So I became exactly that, maybe more out of necessity than choice. When I graduated high school with a 3.8 grade point average, I assumed college would be the next step. I was wrong. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, acceptance letter from the University of Washington in my hand, asking my parents about financial help. My father barely looked up from his newspaper. My mother sighed like I had asked her to donate a kidney. "We need to be realistic, Travis," she said, using that tone teachers use when explaining something to a slow student. "College is expensive. We have to save for Amber's education. She is going to need a good school somewhere private. You understand, right? You are a boy. You can figure it out." I did figure it out, but not in the way they probably imagined. I took out student loans, applied for every scholarship I could find, and worked 2 jobs to cover what the loans did not. My mornings started at 5 a.m. at Starbucks making lattes for people who barely acknowledged my existence. I worked that shift until 1 p.m., then rushed to classes and headed to an Italian restaurant by 5 p.m., where I worked in the kitchen until 11 p.m. most nights. Weekends I picked up extra shifts helping a moving company haul furniture up staircases. I studied computer science because I knew it offered stability and decent pay. Sleep became a luxury. There were nights I fell asleep in the library textbook under my head only to wake up at 4:30 a.m. to make it to my morning shift. But I graduated with a 3.7 grade point average and almost $60,000 in student debt. Meanwhile, Amber enrolled in a private liberal arts college to study art history. Total tuition for 4 years. $160,000. My parents paid every cent. She graduated with 0 debt, a degree she never used, and moved back home to find herself. After college, I landed a job at a tech company in Portland. The starting salary was $75,000 a year. It felt like winning the lottery after years of scraping by. But I did not celebrate by buying a new car or moving into a fancy apartment. I rented a tiny studio, 400 square feet of cramped space, with a window that faced a brick wall. I cooked every meal at home, packed lunches in plastic containers, and kept my 10-year-old Honda Civic running with YouTube tutorials and prayer. Every month I put 40% of my paycheck into savings. No bars, no concerts, no vacations, just work, save, repeat. My coworkers thought I was boring. Maybe I was. But I had a goal. 5 years later, I was promoted to senior developer. My salary jumped to $120,000. My savings account hit $180,000. I was 29 years old and I was ready to buy a house. I found a 3-bedroom place in Lake Oswego, a quiet neighborhood with good schools, even though I did not have kids yet. The house needed some work, but it had a yard, a garage, and enough space to finally breathe. The price was $420,000. I put down 20%, $84,000 from my savings and got a mortgage for the rest. I was so proud. For the first time in my life, I owned something real, something permanent. I called my parents to share the news, expecting maybe a hint of pride or at least acknowledgement of how hard I had worked. My mother answered on the third ring. Her voice was flat. "You bought a house." "Yes," I said, unable to hide my excitement. 3 bedrooms, great neighborhood. "I close next month." There was a long pause. "Did you ask the family before making this decision?" The question hit me like cold water. "Ask the family, Mom. I bought it with my own money. I have been saving for years." "We need to talk," she said. Her tone left no room for argument. "Come home this weekend." Immediately. I hung up feeling confused and uneasy. Maybe they were just worried about the mortgage. Maybe they thought I was making a financial mistake. I tried to convince myself it was concern, not something darker. That Saturday, I drove 3 hours back to Seattle. The moment I walked through the front door, I knew this was not going to be a normal family dinner. The air felt thick, tense. My father sat at the head of the dining table, my mother to his right, and Amber across from them. Nobody smiled. "Sit down, Travis," my father said. It was not a request. Saturday, Amber would not look at me. She had been living at home for 3 years since graduation, drifting between part-time jobs that never lasted more than a few months. She had just broken up with her boyfriend and seemed more lost than ever. My father folded his hands on the table, the same gesture he used when delivering bad news to clients. "We need to discuss this house you bought." "Okay," I said slowly. "What about it?" My mother leaned forward. "You had no right to buy that house, Travis." I blinked. "Excuse me, let me be clear," she continued. "Amber is your sister. She needs stability. She needs a place to live. We have been planning for years that when you were financially stable enough to buy property, it would become a family asset. Something to help Amber get on her feet." My brain could not process what I was hearing. "You thought I would just hand over a house I bought to Amber." "Not hand over," my father corrected. "Share, as a family. You are capable, Travis. You have a good job. You can rent an apartment. Amber needs the house more than you do." I looked at my sister. She sat there silent, not disagreeing, not defending me, just watching. "I worked 2 jobs through college," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I lived in a studio the size of a closet for 5 years. I saved every dollar I could. This house is mine. I am not giving it to anyone." My mother's face hardened. "After everything we did for you, 18 years of raising you, feeding you, putting a roof over your head, and this is how you repay us, by being selfish." Selfish. The word came out louder than I intended. "You paid $160,000 for Amber's college. I got nothing. I am still paying off loans. I have never asked you for a cent since I turned 18. And now you want my house." My father stood up. "If you cannot see reason, then we will handle this another way." I left that night with a knot in my stomach that would not go away. 2 weeks later, a thick envelope arrived at my apartment. Morrison and Associates Attorneys at Law. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a lawsuit. My parents were taking me to court. They claimed I had a moral obligation to share my assets with my sister. They wanted the court to declare the house a family asset or force me to pay Amber $200,000 in compensation. I read it 3 times, certain it was a mistake. Then I called my mother. "You are actually suing me." I could barely get the words out. "You made your choice," she said coldly. "Now the law will make it right." I sat on the floor of my empty apartment and cried for the first time in years. My best friend Kyle found me there hours later. "Bro," he said, reading the lawsuit. "This is insane. You have to fight this." "They are my parents," I whispered. "No," Kyle said firmly. "Parents do not do this." I hired an attorney named Jonathan Reeves who specialized in family disputes. He was in his 50s with gray hair and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen everything. When I showed him the lawsuit, he actually laughed. "This is the most baseless case I have encountered in 20 years," he said. "They have zero legal standing." Over the next few weeks, I gathered evidence. Bank statements showing every deposit from my paychecks over 5 years. The mortgage documents with only my name. Emails from my parents refusing to help with college expenses. Records proving they paid Amber's tuition in full. Jonathan organized it all into a file that left no room for doubt. But then Jonathan's investigator found something that made my blood run cold. My parents had taken out a loan, $80,000 from a credit union secured against their own house. The loan was not for home repairs or medical bills. It was to pay off Amber's credit card debt. She had racked up nearly $70,000 buying clothes, taking trips, eating at expensive restaurants while unemployed. My parents could not afford the loan payments. They were behind by 3 months. They needed an asset, something valuable they could leverage or sell. They needed my house. This was never about fairness or family. It was about fixing Amber's mess by stealing what I had built. The day of the hearing arrived on a cold October morning. I walked into the Multnomah County Courthouse feeling like I might throw up. The hallways smelled like old wood and bad coffee. I found the courtroom on the 3rd floor. My parents were already there sitting with their attorney, a man named Stuart Blackwell, who looked like he specialized in frivolous lawsuits. They did not acknowledge me. My mother stared straight ahead. My father examined his fingernails. The judge entered. Honorable Margaret Thompson, a woman in her mid-50s with sharp eyes and no patience for nonsense. She reviewed the case file while we all sat in silence. Stuart Blackwell stood to present. "Your Honor, this case is about family values and moral obligations. Travis here has a duty to help his sister. His parents sacrificed everything to raise him, and now he refuses to assist when the family needs him most." Judge Thompson looked up. "Counselor, do you have any legal basis for your claim? Any contract agreement or documentation showing your clients have a right to this property?" Stuart hesitated. "Your Honor, this is more about ethical duty than legal contract." "This is a court of law, not philosophy," the judge said dryly. "Do you have legal grounds? We believe the moral imperative creates an implied obligation. That is not how property law works. Proceed with actual evidence, or sit down." Stuart fumbled through his notes, but he had nothing. No papers, no agreements, nothing but entitlement and assumption. Then Jonathan stood up. He was calm, methodical. He presented my bank statements showing every dollar I earned and saved. He showed the mortgage with only my name. He presented the emails where my parents refused to help with my education. He showed proof they paid $160,000 for Amber's school. Then he dropped the bomb. He presented the credit union loan, the one my parents took to cover Amber's debt. He showed they were in default. He showed that they needed my house to save themselves from their own bad decisions. The judge's expression shifted from bored to annoyed. Then it was my turn to speak. I walked to the witness stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. Jonathan asked me to explain my story. I did. I told them about working 2 jobs through college, about the nights I fell asleep standing up from exhaustion, about saving 40% of every paycheck for 5 years, about living in a 400-square-foot studio while my sister lived rent-free in a 4-bedroom house. My voice cracked when I said I never asked for equality. I just want what is mine. Judge Thompson turned to my parents. "Do either of you have any evidence that your son's money came from you? Any proof this house should belong to anyone but him?" My mother opened her mouth, then closed it. My father said nothing. The judge's gavel came down, case dismissed. The plaintiff's claim is without merit and borders on frivolous. I am awarding the defendant his legal fees, $15,000 to be paid by the plaintiffs within 60 days. This court does not look kindly on family members weaponizing the legal system for personal gain. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt hollow. But I was not done. That night, I sat down and made decisions that would change everything. I hired Jonathan again, this time to draft an official document, a formal letter cutting all contact. I blocked my parents' phone numbers, emails, and every social media account. I changed my address and made sure they could not find my new information. Then I did something that felt both necessary and devastating. I had Jonathan draft a will, a legally binding document stating that if anything happened to me, every cent I owned would go to charity, not a single dollar to my parents or Amber. I had their names specifically listed as excluded. I mailed them a copy. But the final move, the one that truly earned the title of nuclear revenge, was the letter I wrote. 10 pages detailing every moment of unequal treatment, every time I was overlooked, every sacrifice I made while Amber was handed everything. I did not write it with anger. I wrote it with cold, factual precision. Every instance, every dollar amount, every broken promise. I sent copies to my parents. I also sent copies to every relative who had ever asked me why I was not closer to my family. Aunts, uncles, cousins. I sent it to family friends who attended every holiday gathering. I laid out the truth in a way that could not be denied or spun. Within a week, my parents' phones started ringing. Friends stopped calling them. Relatives who had always taken their side began to distance themselves. My mother's book club quietly asked her to leave. My father's poker group found reasons he was no longer welcome. They wanted to use the legal system to take what I built. Fine. I used the truth to take away something they valued more than money, their reputation. Amber called me once 2 months later. I let it go to voicemail. She was crying, saying our parents had cut her off financially, that she had to get a real job, that everything was falling apart. She begged me to help. I deleted the message and never looked back. The first few months after the trial were harder than I expected. Cutting off your family, even when they deserve it, leaves a wound. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Sharon Martinez. She was in her 40s with a kind face and a direct way of speaking that I appreciated. You did not lose a family, she told me during our third session. You escaped a toxic relationship. There is a difference. She helped me understand that real love does not come with conditions or lawsuits. Real family does not measure your worth by how much you can provide them. It took months of weekly sessions, but slowly I started to believe her. Work became a refuge. About the nights I fell asleep standing up from exhaustion. About saving 40% of every paycheck for 5 years. About living in a 400-square-foot studio while my sister lived rent-free in a 4-bedroom house. My voice cracked when I said I never asked for equality. I just want what is mine. Judge Thompson turned to my parents. We started a tradition of Thursday night dinners rotating who cooked. Those dinners, sitting around a table with people who chose to be there, felt more like family than anything I had known growing up. I joined a rock climbing gym and met a whole community of people who shared a passion for pushing limits. Every Saturday morning we would tackle new routes, encourage each other, celebrate small victories. Nobody knew about the lawsuit. Nobody knew about my parents. I was just Travis, the guy who brought good coffee and terrible jokes. I also started volunteering. Once a week I taught basic coding to kids from low-income families at a community center. Watching their faces light up when their first program ran successfully reminded me why I fell in love with computers in the first place. Some of those kids reminded me of myself at that age, hungry to learn, desperate for someone to believe in them. Then I met Sarah. She was a graphic designer who came to fix the community center's website. We started talking during a break, and 3 hours later we were still sitting on the front steps, conversation flowing like we had known each other for years. She had this way of listening that made you feel heard, really heard. On our third date, I told her everything. The lawsuit, the betrayal, the nuclear revenge. I expected her to run. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. Good, she said simply. You deserve better. We have been together for a year now. She has never once suggested I reconcile with my family. She has never implied that blood means I owe them anything. She just loves me, supports me, and builds a life with me based on mutual respect. My house, the one my parents tried to take, became something more than property. I painted the walls, colors I actually liked. I planted a garden in the backyard, something I had always wanted but never had space for. I filled the rooms with furniture. I chose art that made me happy and memories with people who actually cared about me. Kyle, Marcus, and Angela come over most weekends. We grill in the backyard, play video games, watch terrible movies. Sometimes I look around at these people, my chosen family, and feel overwhelmed with gratitude. This house, the one my parents said should go to Amber, became a home filled with real love. I heard through distant relatives that my parents eventually sold their house. They downsized to a small condo to cover their debts. Amber finally got a full-time job as a receptionist. She apparently moved into a studio apartment and learned what it means to actually work for a living. They tried to reach out a few times using relatives as messengers. My aunt called to say my mother was heartbroken, that surely enough time had passed. I politely told my aunt that some bridges once burned cannot be rebuilt. I did not do it out of cruelty. I did it out of self-preservation. Do I think about them sometimes? Do I wonder if I should have handled things differently? Occasionally, but then I remember standing in that courtroom watching my own parents try to legally steal from me, and I know I made the right choice. Dr. Martinez asked me once if I had forgiven them. I thought about it for a long time. I forgave them for my peace, I finally said, not for their comfort. Forgiveness, I learned, does not require reconciliation. I can acknowledge that they did the best they could with their broken understanding of love and still choose not to let them hurt me again. I can release the anger without opening the door. I can wish them well from a great distance. 3 years after the lawsuit, I am 32 years old. Sarah and I are planning our wedding. It will be small, just the people who matter. Kyle will be my best man. Marcus and Angela will stand with us. My parents will not receive an invitation, neither will Amber. Some people might think that is cruel. I think it is honest. Why would I invite people who sued me to celebrate my happiness? Why would I pretend we are a family when they made it clear I was only valuable for what I could provide? This house, the one they wanted for Amber, has become everything they said it should not be. It is mine. It is filled with love, laughter, and people who choose to be here. Every room holds memories of game nights, dinner parties, quiet Sunday mornings with Sarah and coffee. The garden I planted has tomatoes and herbs. The garage has my tools and Kyle's motorcycle that he is slowly restoring. I have learned that home is not where you are born. Home is where you are valued. Home is where people celebrate your success instead of resenting it. Home is where love is given freely, not held hostage for favors. My parents wanted this house to save themselves from consequences they created. Instead, it became proof that you can build something beautiful without them. She was a graphic designer who came to fix the community center's website. We started talking during a break, and 3 hours later we were still sitting on the front steps, conversation flowing like we had known each other for years. She had this way of listening that made you feel heard, really heard. On our third date, I told her everything. The lawsuit, the betrayal, the nuclear revenge. I expected her to run. Instead, she reached across the table and took my hand. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about standing up for yourself. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that it is okay to walk away from toxic family. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you deserve people who celebrate your wins, not sue you for them. Take care of yourselves. Protect your peace, and remember that sometimes the family you choose is the one that truly loves you.